today we're on the beautiful island of St. Kitts. This is our ship behind, the Resilient Lady. On the other side behind me is the Queen Mary 2. Now, interestingly, when I used to work on the cruise ships, I did the first stage of my interview in the Queen Mary 2, and they were trying to kind of romance us onto the ship. We were given a lovely meal on there. The thing I remember was that they gave us some lemon to squeeze over our food, and it was wrapped in a piece of gauze so none of the seeds fell out onto our plate, which seemed quite posh. However, on balance of the two ships, I think I'm liking the Resilient Lady better. The other thing that I'm looking at is the difference in size. Our ship is an awful lot narrower than the Queen Mary, so I guess it's a bit smaller. Anyway, as I say, we're in St. Kitts today, and I know absolutely nothing about the island. We've had a look on Google Maps to see what's nearby, and there's not a great deal. It looks like there's sort of shops and things, so we'll probably go and wander around there. There don't seem to be any beaches in a reasonable walking distance, which is a shame because we quite fancied the thought of going and having a final swim and snorkel and just to sit on the beach. It does look like a gorgeous island. That said, from the distance, St. Lucia looked like a gorgeous island as well. So the proof of the pudding will be when we actually get off the end of the pier. So let's go and explore. First impression of St. Kitts, it reminds me an awful lot of St. Martin actually. Lots of really pushy people trying to sell tours. I think they don't realise that we're all aboard at 3:30, so we can't really do that. Also, there's lots of folk with monkeys trying to get people to have their photos taken. Please don't do that, people. It's really cruel. The poor monkeys are wrapped up in Christmas clothing and they look absolutely baking, and I'm sure they don't enjoy it. So just be a bit compassionate and don't do it. Hi, good morning. Actually, there are lots of people trying to sell you taxis and tours, but they're not pushy in the same way that they were on some of the other islands. So it's not a bad thing like it was elsewhere. We found a little urban beach which is covered in sea glass. So Tamsin's on the scavenge, and we maybe sometime keep an eye out for her beautiful jewellery when it's made. Just stopping for a moment to fill my shoes up with unwanted sand and show you this. I don't think I've ever seen a real live conch shell in the wild before. Wonder if there's a hermit crab in there. Strolling down the beach, and I possibly now have more sand in my shoes than feet. We found loads of sea glass, including some blue stuff and some red stuff, so that's very exciting. Also, another exciting thing, I don't know if you can see just behind my head there, is a breadfruit tree. Breadfruit tree are found throughout the Caribbean and are one of the staple carbohydrates that tend to get eaten over here. We tried them when we were in Barbados last year and they were pretty nice, though I prefer the plantains. And here we are exploring some more ruins again. We've stumbled across Fort Thomas Hotel, which looks like a sort of basic bed and breakfast maybe. I'm always curious about the history of places like this. I kind of assume that it was just a bit too basic when the island was getting more and more expensive, and that maybe it went out of business from that, although that's a complete speculation. Who knows, maybe when I get home I will be able to Google it and tell you more. But it is in a sorry state today. Wondering if this used to be a gym maybe, or perhaps even a lobby, who knows. Sort of looks like it might have been a swimming pool, except that there's no swimming pool, so clearly not. Perhaps it's a kitchen. There are lots of contraceptive devices lying around, so obviously it's still used frequently as a romantic retreat. And there you have it. It might not be a ruin on the standard of the Colosseum, but that was quite an exciting little adventure. That's probably enough exploring for now, so we are heading back to the cruise ship. There are a whole load of shops around here though, so first of all, just time for a quick browse. Well, that was totally bizarre. A guy just came over, tried to sell us something, then pulled a Zimmer frame out of his bag, and suddenly he can no longer walk. So he's now struggling along with his Zimmer frame, having been perfectly fine 15 seconds ago. So, thoughts about St. Kitts? I think it's actually the nicest of the islands on the cruise. There's a really safe feel to it, it's really Caribbean, it's really vibrant. There's a really sort of warm, happy, contented kind of atmosphere here. I don't feel like the hawkers are too pushy. I don't feel like any of the taxi drivers are too pushy. A bit unhappy about the monkeys that people are having their photographs taken with, but then I'm more unhappy with the people that are having their photos taken with the monkeys. Shame on you. The prices are reasonable. For instance, I've just had 3 beers for $6, which I thought was quite a good price. On balance, this sort of feels like the kind of island that it would be really nice to come to for a proper holiday in its own right, rather than just a day's stop off on a cruise ship, which means it's even more of a shame that our all aboard time is 3:30 p.m, which is quite early and is about an hour away. And now I think I fancy another 3 beers for $6 before I go back on the ship, considering that you'd only get about 3/4 of a beer on the ship for the same price. And the ship beer isn't the nice Caribbean stuff. Anyway, on that note, I think it's time to go all aboard again, so cheerio and see you back on the ship.
So St. Kitts is sort of the way I remember St. Martin used to be about 10-15 years ago.
Once again though, it feels quite bittersweet. I'm here and I'm actually feeling really quite sad. It's making me miss working on the ships.
I have such fun memories of those days. It was really nice actually working as a proper doctor, unlike the NHS where basically I'm supposed to be some sort of glorified technician / admin assistant. So I feel really quite sad and nostalgic. However, now it's time to go and have a little look in the shops.